Good evening, and this evening we're going to continue with the theme of family. We're going to look at alcoholism from the family's perspective. And tonight I've got the privilege of interviewing somebody who's very close to me, which will give you insight both into my alcoholism and also from the perspective of my own family, because tonight I'm going to introduce my mother. Just before I do introduce her, I'd just like to remind those of you who've not seen my other videos where I came from regarding alcohol. I ended up basically drinking 2 bottles of vodka a day, plus basically anything else I could get my hands on. This included, when I hit my rock bottom, this included methylated spirits, surgical spirits, aftershave, basically anything I could get my hands on. On 2 occasions I very nearly lost my life after taking a lethal cocktail of alcohol and painkillers, and these were scenarios which my family had to put up with at the time. As I've said before, the only thing I can think of to be worse than that is to have to watch over somebody you love destroying themselves and be powerless to do anything about it. So without further ado, I'd like to say good evening to my mum, Brenda. Hello, Mum.
Hello, love. Hello, it's nice to speak to people out there and just let you know, about my life and the other side of the coin, if you like. Because when Paul was drinking, I didn't know what was happening in his life. I put it down to everything. I put it down to depression. I put it down to, he's overdoing things at work. I just didn't know. I made all kinds of excuses for his drinking. I put it down to sickness. And this is the way it was with me. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know about alcoholism. And nobody in my family, as I thought, would have anything like this. As far as I was concerned, when Paul's drinking came about, I just thought, there's nothing I can do about it. He'll just, carry on, and then he'll pick himself up and everything will be okay. But it didn't work out like that.
It certainly didn't, and obviously escalated. When was the first time you can remember that you had an inkling into my drinking was different from other people?
Well, I think really it was from an early age. I would say from about 18.
Yeah. And what was it that you thought was different? How I was acting different maybe from other people who drank normally?
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that, you drinking, had escalated, and your mood swings, you change from being a happy chappy to a sad chappy, if you like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And for me, I want to really speak about how I felt, because I blanked a lot of this out, the drinking days. That's how I learned to cope, was by blanking out a lot that went on. So where the alcoholic has blackouts, I think the person who loves them does as well.
Yeah.
Because I think it's their way of dealing with things, is to shut off and pretend it's not happening. And I'd done that on a lot of occasions, and that went on with me for quite a while. And then I found a group called Al-Anon. And I didn't know where to turn for help, because I didn't understand what was happening. I found this group called Al-Anon, and offer popped, and went to the first meeting, and they were talking about similar things as they did in AA type of thing, and I didn't know whether it was for me. But anyway, as the years went by, I kept going back, and I found that group really helped me to cope with my life, because they turned round to me and said, well, look, Brenda, there's nothing you can do about the drinker. And I thought, you don't tell Brenda there's nothing she can do, because she can do everything. And it's my son, and I know how to get him better. And if I just feed him and make sure that he's got clean clothes and everything's all right, he's going to be okay.
I think, to pick up on that point, that's probably one of the things where we can advise in retrospect now. People, it's very easy to say, perhaps as Al-Anon do, detach, but on a mental level, it's easy to say them words, detached, but on an emotional level, it must be awful difficult. And I think lots of people do what you do. They try to make it look as though life's okay, and you feed them, they look after them, but I suppose eventually what that does, it's just colluding with them, really. The more comfortable you made my life, probably the more I thought it was all right to go on and drink.
Exactly. And this is the way it was. And it was like a merry-go-round, as they say. It's the acceptance, I think. And for me, it was accepting that my son was an alcoholic. And it took me a long time to do this. Even when I was going to Al-Anon and I was getting the help, I was taking advice of the people there, and I was coming home and doing my own thing, if you like. And that went on for a while until the penny dropped, and a dear friend of mine that was in Al-Anon died, and that upset me very much. And the reason being, we sat there one night and we were talking. She said, Brenda, she said, it was her son that was an alcoholic. She said, the only fears I ever have is that, a fire. And for a while, for some reason or other, I didn't go to Al-Anon. Something was going on and I didn't go. But next time I went to the meeting, one of the members came up and I said, where's Joan? He said, oh, haven't you heard? She's dead. Oh, you could have knocked me for 6 because she was a good friend of mine. And that really did hurt me so much. And not only that, I found out that she died in a fire that her son had caused. He drank that much, he fell asleep and dropped his cigarettes in the bin. The house went on fire. She died trying to get out, smoke. She had a bad chest and with the smoke and everything. And her son lived. Now, I don't know from this day what happened. I don't think I went to the meetings for a long time after that. But her son lived, and God help him, because he loved his mum and she loved him. And that's just a little story I had to share with you tonight, because she was a good friend of mine. And this is how things can happen. People think, oh, well, if they stop drinking, if you stop interfering, it doesn't work like that. So for long enough, I found it very hard to be able to take that on board. But then I thought, right, it's about time you started doing something about yourself, Brenda. Get a lifeline for yourself, because this is what it's all about. So it's not like if somebody in your family that you love is sick and you can give them a spoonful of medicine, you call the doctor in and the doctor says, oh, it's okay, we'll do this or we'll do that, and it'll be okay in a few days. It just doesn't work like that. And this is where my heart broke, because I had to make some decisions in my life that were very, very much against my grain. Paul was engaged, and he lived with a nice girl for a while. And then that broke up. He had a few relationships, really nice girls, and they just didn't work out. But then he was coming and going, he was drinking and doing whatever he was doing, phoning up the house. And I got that way. I started unplugging the phone. Now, I wouldn't do that normally, because if any family rang up, I'd be saying, oh, could be an emergency. But I got that sick of him ringing up the house, saying what he was going to do to himself. And he didn't. And I mean, I've got to laugh about that now. And it's lovely that I can do that with my son today. I'll share this story because I need to. Paul was out and about doing his normal.
You mean by that drinking?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I got this call, and I said, "Oh, is that you, Paul?" "Yes, I'm here. I'm going to do away with myself." And I said, by this time, I got a little bit fed up with this, and I was used to these calls. And I said, "Well, that's up to you. If you want to do that, you do that. I'm going to go asleep." Anyway, I put the phone down. I didn't go asleep. I cried all night. And that's the way I had to act. That was my big act, that. Anyway, next morning, the phone went again. And it was Paul. Now, this is the way I was affected by then. I was disgusted because he was alive.
But that must be awful. I mean, and one of the things from the drinker's point of view, I mean, the thinking's really distorted. And one of the things when you do sober up from an episode like that is the guilt that you feel when you love the people that you're abusing in many ways. The guilt that you feel is unbearable. And that's one of the things I refer to as the sobriety saboteurs in the philosophy of Alcoholic to Alchemist. In that guilt is so crippling that to try and relieve the guilt you feel from doing stuff like we've just explained, you drink again, because drink at one point used to relieve the guilt. It block it out basically.
Yes.
But
well, yeah, and that's true, son. I mean, it does. But there must be thousands and thousands of people out there that have been in the same situation as me, that have got sons, have got daughters, have got husbands, have got wives, that are drinking and they're going through all these emotions. You go through anger, you go through fear. The fear is horrendous because it's there. It's in the pit of your stomach all the time. And you just want it to go away. You want everything, you just want to wave that magic wand and everything to be right. Everything to go away. It doesn't work like that. And for me, I had learned by this time, because this had been going on for a lot of years, and I learned, well, you know, lots of people were saying to me, let the alcoholic be responsible for his own drinking. There's nothing you can do about it. Well, by then, I think I was sick and tired of trying to fix this, and I couldn't. So the next thing, Paul, well, he had been at home, but I told him he couldn't live at home again. Virtually threw him out.
can I just, I mean, on that note as well, after all you've done, and you know, I love you and my dad very, very much, and as I said before, the crippling guilt that I used to feel after these episodes, after I'd sobered up, if you like, at least got dry, was absolutely horrendous. It was unbearable. But on that note, we were talking before when, you know, you used to do things for me and make sure that I was, you know, make sure that my clothes were all clean. You'd make sure. I can always remember, if you used to come into my bedroom of a morning, because I was living at home then, and you'd shout and roar at me, and I always remember me bedroom would be full of bottles, because I used to bring them in my underwear and everything, so you couldn't find them, and take them up to my bedroom, hide them in my bed. And I got so bad that I didn't even bother clearing them out.
No.
And you'd come up, obviously you could smell the drink in there, and you'd roar and you'd shout at me. And that, in a sense, was music to my ears, because what I used to say to myself, well, wouldn't anybody drink if you got that? It's very selfish and self-centred, really. But that morning you come in, and I can still remember your words to this day, and they had such a profound effect on me. You never shouted, you never roared, you just turned around and you said, look, Paul, we love you very much, but we can't stand to see you destroying yourself. We can't watch it anymore. And you said, if you want to drink, you'll have to leave, you'll have to go. And that hit me so hard. It was like finally the responsibility was back with me, and it was down to me. And it was from that day onwards, really. So what I'm saying here is that parents and family who were very close and loved the, love the drinker in the family. I tend not to use the word alcoholic myself, for reasons I've explained in the
Yes,
philosophy and in the book, but I'd sooner call it a person who's experiencing alcoholism, which is, there's a reason, and I won't go into that here, that I go into it in the book, but I was just thinking, from that point, there was a profound change in me. The onus come back to me, and there's lots of people out there who do collude with the drinker in the family. They'll phone up, for instance, when they're not going to work, they'll phone up on their behalf and say they're sick. You know, they'll cover up for them. They'll say he's not well, and all that really does, that colluding, all that does is prolong a drinker's drinking life. And I know it's very difficult for people out there to give tough love, if you want to call it, but if we both look back in retrospect, although it was terribly difficult for you to say that to me, that had the most profound effect on me. You giving me that tough love, saying, look, you can go out. Instead of you say, don't drink, or shouting at me when I drank, or whatever, when you said, it's up to you, we can't stop you drinking. Once you accepted that, and you said, but you're not doing it under this roof, basically. And I suppose we can share as well that there was one time I actually come back and we had the glass front door, and I was ringing the bell, and nobody opened the door, and I was banging with my elbow, I remember that to this day, on the glass door, and the glass went through, although I didn't mean to put it through.
No.
And then I broke the glass, climbed through the door and got in, and you and my dad said to me, how did you get in? I said, through the front door, but I meant literally through the glass of the front door. But I remember you had to phone the police on that occasion.
Yes, we did.
And again, you know, I remember you saying to me, it felt so bad doing that, but that was the best thing, to keep putting the onus back on me, making me take responsibility for my actions. I needed that. At the time, I didn't want to hear that, but like I say, colluding basically means supporting the alcoholic, or the person with alcoholism, supporting them with his drinking in ways you don't mean to do it, such as helping them, phoning up when they're off work, you know, making sure the clothes are all right, making sure the place is tidy, nothing looks out of place, so that to the people on the outside everything looks fine. But that really does prolong a drinker's life, whereas if you say, look, my son, my partner, whatever, he's got a real bad drink problem. You know, if you tell people that, if you make the person take responsibility for their actions, which when I smashed the front door of the house, not meaning to, albeit, but when I did smash the front door of the house, you phoned the police, and the police come and took me away, and that was the best thing. I remember being locked up. I was locked up in the cell. I was shaking so bad that I couldn't pick a cup up. I remember asking for a drink, and I wasn't given a drink, and I remember staring at the toilet water in the cell, you know, the water down the loo in the and I was thinking, I'm gonna have to drink that. And you know, part of me, when I hit that place, thought, I wasn't born like this. No. So it was the best thing, really, could have
And
done.
you know, Paul, also, what they say is the drinking affects the whole family.
Most
and there was a
definitely.
sister involved in this as well. And, you know, she came bottom of the list, if you like, because the whole of my existence was revolved around your drinking.
No.
Because I wonder what he's doing now. I wonder where he is now. I wonder, has he got into any trouble? And I never even... I've shared this with Barbara since, you know, his sister. And I've said, you know, I feel bad about that because, well, we've talked about it now and that's been cleared up. But she was put at the back of the queue. What
you mean is that you were consumed with trying to fix me.
Exactly.
That really, Barbara, fell into the background and obviously felt it.
Yes.
You know,
yeah.
which...
And this is where, you know, Paul, it's the whole family are affected by the drinker. Because, you know, everybody has a different opinion. I come from a big family, as you know, and I used to be like a detective. I'd be going round them all saying, now if Paul comes here, don't give him any money and don't let him put him up for the night. And you know, my family used to say, oh gosh, well I couldn't do that. I couldn't turn him away. Don't give him a bed for the night. Poor Nan, my mother, you know, she loved you to bits, and she used to say, oh, I couldn't see him walking the streets. But
on that note as well, you know, if I can just add the things that you do, I loved my nan. She was like a second mother. Your mum was like a second mother to me, and I loved her to bits, and I could never imagine life with her not being round. And I remember one time she used to go to the bingo of an evening time, and I remember she let me into her house, and she went to the bingo, and I was drinking, and when she come back, I'd taken a load of tablets, and I was being carted off in an ambulance, and that must have been absolutely awful for her to look over and see. And I must explain, you know, to the people watching this tonight, the reason I used to do them things, I never wanted to kill myself, I never wanted to do away with myself, but I was so frightened. I felt like I was totally and utterly out of control. And when I took tablet overdoses and told somebody and was taken away in an ambulance, they would obviously keep me in hospital and then maybe send me to a rehab. And I felt safe in them places. So
I can understand that.
Well, so that's where I am. They say you think that a person's insane when they're drinking, but when you think about their goal, when they're doing these things that look utterly insane, if you like, there is actually a practical reason. As for my taking the tablets, that was my quickest entry into hospital, and it was the only place I felt safe. So I've become institutionalized in many ways.
I can understand that too. But you know, what I'd like to say tonight as well, I think for all the trauma and the heartache, if you like, and the tears that were shed over the years, there's an awful lot of good come out of it.
There certainly has been in recent years. I'll come back to that towards the end, the good that's come out of it. But I was just thinking then, you know, about, we're talking about how it affected the family, and things are coming up in my mind. We're talking about my sister Barbara, who I love very much, and obviously we all love very much. But I remember I was very protective towards her when we were young and when we were at school.
Always holding hands, going to school together.
But I was very protective towards her. And I remember I was having really bad hallucinations with the drink, and we were both at home, and our bedrooms were next to each other, and yours was on the end of the corridor or the hall. And I remember this night I was having really bad hallucinations. They started off with faces at my bedroom window, and I was coming in and telling you and me dad, and I go back to my bedroom. But then, as real as you're sitting there as well, I went out onto the hall, onto the landing or onto the corridor, and as real as you're sitting there, I seen these gunmen with machine guns going into our bathroom, and I was terrified. I remember thinking, I've got to get Barbara out of bed. Yeah, I was terrified, and I wanted to get Barbara out of her bedroom, and I really thought there was gunmen in the bathroom. And I remember actually putting my hands against the wall and shimmying up the wall towards her bedroom, going in, saying to her, Barbara, you've got to get into my mum and dad's bedroom as fast as you can. So that I said, there's gunmen in the bathroom, and I was absolutely convinced. And on another occasion, I remember, all I remember was you and my dad coming up to my bedroom, and I felt like I'd been hit over the head with something. And I remember you saying to me, Paul, get your clothes on, there's an ambulance coming, and I just didn't know why. And today I know I'd had a really bad fit, and I was frothing, and the whole bed was shaking. But I remember prior to that as well, I was having hallucinations that didn't go away for days, and I was seeing fights going on in the streets. It was like gang fighting, and I was seeing people handcuffed in a pond in a garden opposite our house, and none of that existed. And it was only about a week later, I was an entertainer at the time, and my dad was driving me to the club because I wasn't really capable. I was capable of performing a week later, but I couldn't drive. So my dad was taking me to the club, and I said to my dad, I said, isn't it funny that none of them riots were in the Liverpool Echo? And he said to me again, he said, Paul, it didn't happen. And he'd said this all week, and I hadn't clicked. I thought, I don't know what he's talking about, you know, it was obvious. Yeah. And I was just thinking, I was so grateful that when I realised, you know, I've been hallucinating for the best part of a week. And there's lots of people with wet brains that stay in that, like, you know, they stay like that, yeah. So
you see, I don't understand that part of it, but I do remember the hallucinations very much so. And did you remember us getting the police down one time? And the police were absolutely fantastic. Dad, Barbara and myself were sitting on the stairs in the hall, and you were saying, stay there, there's a gun through the letterbox. And we play. It was like somebody playing a part in a show, because we sat on the stairs, you were there guarding us, and you know that this gun was supposedly sticking through the letterbox. In the end, you agreed about the police. I didn't call the police. You said, we better get the police.
I remember what it was.
Do you remember that?
No, I remember it was, I could see somebody trying to rob we had a van that belonged to, I was in a band, and we had a van outside, and I kept hallucinating somebody was trying to steal the van. Yeah. I remember, and trying to phone the police. Well,
I phoned the police, and they did come down, a police van and a police car, and you were still in the hall at the time, you know, doing the protecting bit. And we opened the door, and the police were all standing there. And your words to the police were, "It's about time." And I thought, oh my God, he's going to go in the back of the police car and they're going to cart him away. But we couldn't do anything. We were helpless towards this situation. But, you know, all fairness to the police at that time, they were absolutely brilliant. They played along with it. It was like a show going on. You could see
heads coming out the paths. I remember
you could. You'd said to the policeman, "Listen, get them blokes off the top of your car. They're jumping all over your car." There was all kinds of soldiers on the window ledges outside. It was unbelievable what was going on. But I realised anyway that this was to do with the drink, and we all played along. And in the end, the police went, and things quietened down, and they played along so much. They said, "Okay, Paul, we've got rid of all those soldiers out the way, and we've cleared everything." And you're saying to the police, "Well, I hope so, because otherwise we'll be back on to you." Anyway, I mean, I laugh now about it, and it's nice to be able to do that. But off they went, and we all settled down. All hours in the morning it was. We had a cup of tea, and we did go to bed. And the next day, you got up, and you looked bloody awful. And we were talking, and I said, you didn't remember a thing about that particular night.
No.
I asked you, and you said, "No, it didn't. Nothing happened, Mum." And I couldn't believe that you didn't remember anything that had gone on that particular night.
And yet I can remember it
but
now.
But you didn't.
Mm.
It's weird, isn't memory. It? It's weird. And that's where I say to the people out there that are living with a drinker, to get help for them.
Yeah.
No matter how you know they do it, but you know don't falsify yourself. Don't be thinking, well, you know, there's nothing you know you can do about this. You know, it'll go away when it's ready. You know, if he stops drinking, everything's going to be hunky dory. And it just doesn't work like that.
No. And I think I get the same thing. I mean, I've been sober for a lot of years now. I don't even count them anymore, because I believe in living my quality life on a daily basis. But I've been sober for a long time now, and this all seems very alien. It seems like a past life, this, doing
I
this
can
interview.
understand that.
It's that long ago. But people often come up to me and say, you know, so-and-so's drinking, what can I do for them? And the truth of the matter is, there's nothing you can do. What I normally say is that, first of all, as much as possible, detach and try and live your life. On an emotional level, that must be extremely difficult, but there isn't really another option. And if they continue to try and collude with the drinker by helping them, by, you know, maybe phoning up for the work or making excuses for them, you know, making sure that they look good, tidying the house, tidying the room. All that's going to do really is prolong the drinking.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've had people who have colluded with the drinker, and they've lost the drinker is died anyway. And then there's people like myself who, you know, the family's colluded with for a while, and then it's turned around and they've come through it and they've done wonders with their life. And what we said, I spoke to this about Wendy, who we'd done another interview with. And, you know, the point we made to the viewers at that point in time was, no matter what you do, it's not going to affect the outcome. So try as much as possible to live your own life and detach. But one of the things I do think is really helpful, if you know that that love is available when it's needed. So I think if you do detach and you allow the drinker to go out and say, you go and drink as much as you want, but you don't do it under this roof, and also allow them to take the consequences whilst you're trying to get on with their life. And to me, that must be extremely difficult. It must be very difficult.
It's so hard, Paul. And, you know, when it's your child or your husband or your wife or your daughter, you know, it's harder again. You know, it took me a long, long time to accept that the only one I could look after was myself, really, and be there for you. And if it's all right, I'd like to share a story, actually.
Yeah, okay.
And you will remember this. You were quite ill at the time. I don't know whether you'd had a little stroke or what you'd had. And you ended up in hospital. And you were in for a couple of weeks. And I got a phone call off one of the members, I think, of AA, to say that you were in hospital. And at that time, I'd been grabbing a lifeline for me. I'd been getting help for me to cope with myself, really, with all this emotional turmoil that I was going through. And I was doing okay. I was doing that well. I said to this chap that rang up, oh, well, that's okay. He's in hospital. He's in the best place. And you were in for 2 weeks. And it killed me to do this, but I stayed away. I never went in to see you for 2 weeks. And any mother out there that's listening to this might turn around and say, oh, God, she's a right mother. Fancy doing that. You know, her son in hospital and she never went near him. But I knew I was doing what was right for me at the time.
And again, you know, I'd like to add, that would have helped me more than I remember. You know, you were awful good. I remember when we had the caravan in Wales, and you used to sit there on the opposite settee from me, and you'd watch over me all night, you know, when I was bad and things. But that wouldn't have helped me half as much as you turning your back on me, so to speak.
Yes.
And making me think that you didn't care. That would get me attention more, because then the onus is put back onto me. It's really, now there's only me. I've got to do something about that. Yeah. And I think if one thing comes out of this interview, the emphasis should really be on the point that I am, as well as trying to get on with your own life and detaching, even allowing, you know, telling the drinker that they must go, they must leave the family home, whatever, trying to get on, but also to you enable them by colluding with them, by making their life easy, but it just opens a pathway for them to continue drinking. Whereas if you take that harsh line, as much as it may kill you to do it, it has a much better effect, a much more positive effect, in that it puts the onus back onto the drinker. It certainly did with me and hundreds of other people I know. And when the family took that took that route with the drinker, it made them think. And it, every time you'd done something like that, you know, you and me dad done something like that, it would make me really think. And I think it's that eventually that got me to turn my life round.
Well, you know, I hope so, Paul. But at the end of the day, it was a few days had gone by, and I was really upset because I knew what I was doing was right. My heart was telling me to stay put, but my body was saying, get to the hospital and see. But I knew what I was doing was right for me, and that might sound a load of crap to people out there, but I knew it was right. And you phoned up after about 3 or 4 days, happy as Larry. And I thought, how dare you sound so happy on that phone?
Of course, yeah.
And because you were doing what was right for you. You had people there visiting you that understand or understood where you were coming from with the drink. Drinkers that had got themselves sober, and they'd come in to see you, and you was happy as Larry, you were having a little bit of a laugh and joke. And there was me crippled, and I should have been elated because you were on the phone and you were well. But I thought, the cheek of him.
Well, really, I suppose from my point of view, in retrospect, I fully understand. You know, you have every right to feel like that. I was cocking my life up, I was destroying myself. Then I'd go into hospital where I felt safe. And I'd have people there to support me. And there was really, your lives were being destroyed as a consequence in many ways. So I can see, you know, you had every right to feel like that. You know, I fully accept that. But I will say, I mean, as much as I may have given the perception everything was all right when I phoned up, I was probably riddled with guilt, because that guilt never ever went away. You know, you love your family more than anything, and you don't particularly care about yourself. That's one thing I like to emphasise. I didn't care about myself, but I did very much care about what I was doing to you, my dad and Barbara. I really cared about that more than I cared about myself. And when I seen the devastation I'd done in drinking, and when I was coming out of the
Yes.
fog, so to speak, and I was faced with the consequences of my last drink, I found that unbearable. And I think that's a point, like I say in the book I call Guilt as Sobriety Saboteur, that voice in your head saying, go and have a drink, that'll make it all right, because drinking affects our frontal lobes, which makes us uninhibited, which in simple terms means that we don't care. So if we go and take a drink, but there comes a point, what I call in the book the abreactive threshold, that when you cross it, when you drink, it doesn't make things go away anymore. In fact, it escalates them, it exaggerates them. And at that point, you realise that you can't drink because you can't get the same effect out of drink as you used to get. And I think once you've crossed that line, there is no going back. I've never met anybody who's gone back and drank normally.
It's a very, very complicated situation, I think, because, as I say, when we first started the interview, most parents or loved ones, you know, just want their partners or sons and daughters to get well. You want to be able to give them the medicine, get the doctor in, and everything will go away. But with this particular thing, the drinking, it doesn't work like that. So I'd just like to say to any parent, mother, wife, or whoever it might be out there who's got a partner that drinking and their life has become unmanageable, get help.
Yeah.
Whatever help it is out there for them.
And you've mentioned, I mean, one of the associations, Al-Anon,
Yes.
which is the AA sister group, if you like, for the families of people who have got drinking problems. And also we've got Alateen, or they have Alateen.
That's right.
And I'd like to emphasise, I mean, at this point, my philosophy is called Alcoholic to Alchemist, and we use the term alchemist not in the ancient tradition of changing base metals into gold, but in the psychological sense of transforming your emotional and mental baggage, if you like, into your psychological wealth. And the philosophy that I've lived by, that's transformed my life, that I've made available to the people out there, it's not against the AA program whatsoever. It's there to live alongside the AA program. For many years I also went to AA, and I owe my life to AA. I'm so thankful I went. In the end, I needed something more. I needed to investigate. I needed to understand myself more. I needed a deeper psychological understanding of myself. So I went on a journey, as you know, for many, many, many years, and I documented that journey. And the fruits of that are the Alcoholic to Alchemist philosophy, which is made available to the public, both in my books and also on the mentoring website now.
Yeah.
So we were talking before, you know, to come to a conclusion tonight, we don't reminisce about the old days. We've had some laughs, we've been able to go back, but I've said this, and you know, I'd like to say it again to the people out there, is that I can only think of one thing worse than what I went through with drink, and that's being a family member of somebody you love, watching them destroying yourself and not being able to do a thing about them. And I think we can both verify tonight that literally nobody can stop a loved one drinking.
No.
And as much as possible, you have to live your life. But we can say that we've had years upon years now of a happy and real close family life.
We have, and it's helped us all to love one another.
Yeah.
We've always loved one another, but there's that bond there now. That's what I'm going to call it. It's a love bond. And another thing I'd like to share, Paul, just quickly, is when I owe my life to Al-Anon as well, because, you know, I got a lot of strength and I had a lot of friends there. And I also went on the helpline as well when I was in Al-Anon for many years. And that gave me a lot of strength because I'd managed to get the strength and the help and the knowledge, if you like, to help other people.
Yeah.
Because of the years I'd been in Al-Anon, and it was many years. And without them, I've got to say that I wouldn't have been able to cope.
Yeah.
And the helpline was good for me, and hopefully good for the people who phoned up, because I was helping myself by sharing my experiences, and the feedback was good for the people on the other end of the phone.
I think with any organisation like that, I think the best thing for the people who are in it, if they can share and realise they're not going, like anything, like any illness such as cancer, or you know, people going through any sort of illness, if they can share, or if they've lost somebody, you know, if they've been recently, if they've had a bereavement recently, they can share with people who are going through it, and they can interact and share with each other. It lightens the load somewhat. And I think the same with alcoholism. If you can find people who are going through it just as you are, you can forge really good friendships with them people, really good bonds, and it must lighten the load.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to just say now, Paul, that I feel as if my life has changed tremendously, and I think what my family have brought into it now, it's made me a better person, because it's made me understand myself an awful lot, because of your drinking. Now, doesn't that sound silly? But
I think, you know, on that note as well, it's something that I've been thinking about this week. Is really, lots of people out there say, oh, we must battle alcohol, we must battle alcoholism. And the problem is not in the bottle, it's in the person. And we mustn't battle alcohol or battle alcoholism. We must start to understand ourselves, which means going on a psychological journey inward. And today in the book I speak about the sobriety saboteurs. And the sobriety saboteurs I've found from doing surveys with people, you know, people I've known over the years, they seem to be coming four main guises. There's guilt, people go back to the drink because of guilt. There's fear, there's psychological pain, and the big one with me, you said it before, you were a happy chappy and then I was very down. The big one with me was futility. I know I've always been a creative person since I was young, especially musically when I was young.
Yeah.
And I used to go on highs with the band, you know, we would achieve it. And then I'd go on these great big lows where I used to think, God, what's life all about? And I'd become terribly down. And it was at that point when I used to start drinking, that drinking gave me a lift. And if I had to pick the main, because I was streetwise as a child. I had to be streetwise because we were brought up in Liverpool.
Yes.
And, you know, Liverpool, it can be a tough place to be brought up, and it was a gang culture when I was young, so we used to hang around and there used to be a lot of skitting going on.
Yeah.
But I had a loving family. I had no family problems. I had a lovely family, and when I used to go out, you know, we would have these slanging matches with people, and I could give as good as I got, but it would cut into me, you know, when we were skitting each other and
Yes.
whatever, and it would cut into me. And I suppose my self-esteem, although I looked the most confident person on the outside, my self-esteem was quite low, even though I give the impression it was high. And then I'd achieved these things. I had the best job in the world, you know. I was in a band with all my closest friends, travelling up and down the country, playing on nightclubs, so we were getting a lot of attention and getting paid for doing it as well. But then I'd had these terrible dips, and it was then I found that alcohol really started to eat into me, because when I had the dips, I would turn to alcohol, and these dips were, what's life all about? I don't understand it. It was like a depression in many ways.
Yeah.
So for me, the big sobriety saboteur was futility. It was, what's life all about? Today, I always say this now, if you want to counteract alcoholism, I don't believe that alcoholism is an illness or a disease, although I believed that for years upon years, and it didn't move on. And I've explained where the disease model of alcoholism come from in other videos, but I believe that alcoholism is a mechanism of escape. You know, what it does, if we're going through troubles, it tends to blot them out, it masks them for a while, therefore it's very seductive. And the antidote to that really is to live a life that you love on a daily basis, because if you live a life that you love on a daily basis, you're never going to want to escape.
No.
Therefore, drink becomes redundant. And if I had to sum up the antidote to alcohol in one sentence, that's what it would be. Just find out what you love to do and do it, because then you've got no need to escape from anything.
And that's absolutely, you know, wise, what you've just said, the wise words, Paul. And I admire the way you've turned your life round. I really do admire you. I'm so proud of you today, and that comes straight from the heart. You've turned your life round, the whole of your family. And I can remember your sister turning round many years ago and saying, I hate him.
Quite understandable.
But our life's turned round now, the whole family, and we love one another today, and you can't buy that.
Yeah, I suppose in many ways, you know, we always loved one another. Even that hate comes out in frustration, I suppose, you know, them words. And I can understand, you know, if I put myself in Barbara's position, my sister's position, it must have been awful for her to have been not shoved aside so much, but because the family was consumed, it was what was happening to me. Barbara wasn't to worry. She was, whereas I was worrying you at 24 hours a day. Therefore, I was consuming, I was taking all the attention. And that was at Barbara's expense. But, you know, I'd like to say on this video as well how much I love Barbara, and I always have done. And I remember when we were kids, you know, I would protect her with my life if I had to. And on a few occasions, I did get into brawls and all sorts because of that. But, you know, the family today is exceptionally close. You know, it's years and years since all of this happened. But it just goes to show you that your life can be turned round, you know, radically transformed if you're on the right path. And I do believe that. I don't say the alcoholic to alchemist route is the only route by any means. It's a route that's worked for lots of people. And I've took all of the different strategies and exercises that people that I know have been very successful, and I've put them all together, collated and put them all together in the book, and that's the philosophy. Just talking about guilt though, because I know a lot of people can't handle the guilt, the drinkers can't handle the guilt because of the devastation they do to the family. Just a couple of points before we sum up. One thing is that people experience alcoholism are very good at what is called shadow projection. And what that means is that all the things we hate about ourselves build up inside us, and we'll project them onto people closest to us, so they'll become scapegoats, and we'll say some of the most horriblest things to the people we love, And it's simply us externalising our own frustration. And I would like to say to family members, please don't try to depersonalise that. All the horrible things we say when we're in drink, not one word of it is ever meant. You know, it's our madness at ourselves being externalised, if you like. The other thing is that people who are going through guilt and they're returning to drink because of guilt, which I know many people do, think about this, you know, does all the guilt in the world ever change anything?
No, it doesn't.
And the answer is it doesn't. So you've got to, step 8 in the Alcoholic to Alchemist philosophy is to forgive yourself. And I look at I'm not a religious person, but I look at the words of Jesus here and say, when he said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And I think we have to take that on board, or maybe the person who's drinking has to take that on board, is that when we drink, one of the first faculties that go is reasoning. We have no faculty to marshal our reasoning. Therefore, we do a lot of things that are uncharacteristic, and we really regret them. But we don't mean to do them. There's no intent there. So I think to alleviate that guilt, we've got to take the words such as Jesus used, Father, forgive, and forgive ourselves, because at that point we didn't know what we were doing. And I think if we can get some compassion, also in the philosophy, step 6 is about loving your own inner child, which will help you to alleviate that guilt as well. So, you know, there's lots of things that will help the drinker out there to alleviate the drink. And like you spoke tonight on behalf of the people on the, you know, family, there is organisations that they can go to. Yeah. We'll have videos up, and I'm hoping to get over time more videos up on the website of family members, so that people can go online and they can listen to people who are going through exactly what they're going through and listen to their advice, but they can do that 24 hours a day.
That's absolutely fantastic, Paul. And you know, this is what we need today. You know, we need more awareness of the drink problem, and we need awareness of the people who are living with it, and you know, let's get help out there for all of them.
Well, I think on that note, first of all, I'd like to say I love you very much, Mum.
I love you too.
And my dad, who's unfortunately not here tonight.
No.
But he's not one for going on camera. He's quite a passive, quiet man.
He'd be crawling under this chair now, wouldn't he?
So I'd like to say, and express how much I love the family. And I'd like to, you know, say I'm just grateful to you, my dad, and to Barbara for the life I have today, because I have a fantastic life. And just to conclude, I'd just like to say thank you for listening tonight, and I hope that between myself and my mother Brenda, that we've relayed some information that is going to help you in the future. And on that note, I'd like to say good night and thank you.